The Bay Area Justice Funders Network is an alliance of funders working to strengthen a grant-making agenda to support social justice issues and movement in the Bay Area and beyond. And the network was born out of political struggle in the streets and really philanthropy's inability to respond to the most pressing crises of today.
A lot was happening in our local community. Oscar Grant was killed on a New Year's Day in 2009, and it shook the community to its core. I mean, I think people in Oakland really felt such devastation because it was documented on film. At those moments of like frustration and a feeling of desperation, you know, I think the call is to take action, and really it came into fruition and evolved from an initial set of meetings that two colleagues in philanthropy decided to create a space called the Bay Area Social Justice Infrastructure Funders. Leticia Alcantar, who is at the time the executive director of Akanati Foundation, where I work, and Laura Labate, who was at the French American Charitable Trust, were really they were the people in philanthropy that had the vision for creating space to bring us together, and I was the one that was actually tasked with making it happen.
Entrenched socioeconomic inequality is one of the preeminent issues of our time, and yet of the $50 to $60 billion that U.S. philanthropy is distributing every year, less than 10% is going to support low-income communities of color, the communities who are most impacted by inequality. So we formed the network because there's a clear need to move equity and justice to the center of our strategic conversations in philanthropy. From my perspective, philanthropy's greatest imperative for innovation is to more effectively and more substantially mobilize resources to support the advancement of equity and justice, and to do so in a way that is authentically aligned with the priorities and strategies of community leaders and the movements that they're a part of.
Naming race and equity as an agenda and naming the role of structural racism, right, in shaping the institutions of our society and shaping the economy that we're in, that you're right, builds up the possibility of the accumulation of such great amounts of wealth. And we see, you know, there are multiple sources of that. The way that policy is set up rewards that, and you look at where a lot of the new wealth is coming from, and there's and the rules of the game are set up that there's a disproportionate reward, not only to the 1%, but also to folks who work in finance and in the tech industry, where certain, you know, monopolies exist that allow people to capture huge amounts of the market and also generate a lot of wealth.
Where to invest your endowments, you know, whether to align your endowment with your programmatic grant making, how much payout should there be, right? How do you invest in moments? How do you invest in movements? How do you create the infrastructure so that both can flourish, right? And that we can actually make real social change. And especially in light of Black Lives Matter, COP21, and climate change, and, you know, the ever-growing threat of economic inequality and displacement that we here in the Bay Area are experiencing.
So the framework for social justice philanthropy was really a process that grew out of trying to identify what is a social justice funder. We really wanted to be able to curate a lot of the ideas, practices, and behaviors of what people in the field are already doing and put it together in one document. Despite the fact that our field has a lot of white papers and a lot of other reports, we find that it's really hard to replicate what other people are doing. And so we wanted to create a comprehensive guide that not only is really detailed towards every stage of grant making, but really allows folks to apply the values of justice and equity in the day-to-day practices of their grant making.
I'm really excited about the potential for it and the responses we've been getting so far. People saying, wow, this is really filling a gap. And this framework, they're saying, oh, I wish I had this when I first started grant making, and this is how I plan to onboard people who are joining my organization to teach them how to do it right.
And I'm very excited to say that the framework that Dana has talked about today is really going to be the foundation for a 100-hour leadership development course known as the Harmony Initiative, which you might have heard Chris mentioned. And BAJFN will start accepting applications February 1st for this leadership development program. And it hits home for me. I am part of the inaugural pilot of Harmony, and I can say from the vantage point of not a steering committee member, but as a participant, how much we're not even halfway through this 10-month program. And I can say how much it's really helped support me to do that transformation that we had talked about. I have been using this experience as a tool, as a support system, as a cohort that is really pushing me to think broadly about how I do my own grant making and how I do my own movement building within my organization and my community.
Building the choir is really important, and how we plan to do that, and we already are doing that, is through this leadership development program where we're building regional cohorts of grant makers. And these are people who are looking to improve their grant making. They're working in many different kinds of issues, different kinds of foundations, and they're coming together for a 10-month intensive learning journey together. So through that process, they're developing some really trusting relationships and engaging in difficult questions together. So building that community is a first step towards building that choir. And as we have each successive program, another community is being built, either here in the Bay Area or eventually in other regions in the country. And we're hoping that those communities become communities of practice, communities of support, and actually engage with each other as well. So eventually we have a network of people that can become that choir or multiple choirs.
5 years after its launch, I'm thrilled that many of our aspirations for the network have become reality. The Justice Funders Network has helped catalyze critical philanthropic conversations at both the local and the national level. And it has also helped to highlight and uplift important campaigns and movements